am a senior in the Department of Theology, and my senior thesis was on the church in the Congo and how they kind of adapted their ecclesiology, which is the study of the church itself, to what's going on there right now with the conflict. I'm going to kind of give you a brief synopsis of what's happening to give you historical context to what's going on. But the conflict goes a lot deeper than the 10-ish year war that's going on right now. It runs as deep as the Belgian colonization. So it is a little different from a normal colonization in that King Leopold II, who's the man right there, started the Free Congo state, which was not an actual country. It was his own little country itself. So he owned it. So in saying that, he couldn't use public funds to support the colonization. And so because of that, there was a lot of exploitation that he allowed from slave traders and ivory traders and rubber traders, which resulted in the death of about 10 million indigenous. And so that kind of started a revolution, I guess you could say. So the Congo Reform Association is a predecessor to Amnesty International. So what they did was really look at what was going on with the labor. Granted, this is 1908, so it's a long time ago. So labor laws didn't really exist, especially in Africa. So they tried to start to do that. So, like I said, in 1908, it was annexed from Belgium, but it didn't receive its independence until the 1960s. So, around 1960, you have Mobutu Sese Seko, who was a dictator for 30 years. He ran the country from 1965 to 1996. And he was supported originally by both the United States and Belgium when he was put into power. So he renamed the country Zaire. So I learned the country of Zaire before I learned the country of Africa growing up. So that's kind of what he did there. There's a lot of question why he did that. A lot of it goes with power and that sort of thing. But he did fight consistent opposition, especially from the Catholic Church. The democracy movement was a movement that a group of Catholic activists started. In 1992, they held the Sovereign National Conference, which was shut down by force by the military. In the process of shutting it down, they murdered 30 Catholic activists in the process, ranging from about 18 years old to 60. So it was a universal Catholic movement throughout the country, not just a group of young people kind of revolting. But as most people know historically, in about 1994, the Rwandan genocide started to shift over into the Congo. That's really where a lot of the conflict currently is going through. So because of this, the Rwandan government and the Ugandan government didn't really like him at all, and so they invaded and then in the process overthrew him. To kind of give you context of what's going on, so I don't have that level pointer thing. So this is where most of the conflict is happening in Kivu, so North Kivu and South Kivu, because that's where Rwanda and North Uganda are. Oh, I don't need enough for this, but thank you. So to kind of, that's where most of the conflict and most of the deaths have happened, is in this area right here. So after Mobutu, Kabila was put into power by Rwanda and Uganda. He was originally very well liked, yet there was a UN panel called the United Nations Panel on the illegal exploitation of natural resources and other forms of wealth in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And so through that panel, they came to decide that there were a lot of familiar patterns that were coming up about unaccountability and exploitation and corruption that the government had ties to. A lot of it was run by the local militia leaders, but the government at that time did have ties to this. So his popularity kind of dwindled because of that. After that, the Uganda and Rwanda began to not like the Congo again, even though they put him into power, so that's slightly ironic. But what is called the Great African War began, or the Second Congo War. It's called a lot of different things. But so the DRC was with Zimbabwe, Namibia, and Angola against Rwanda and Uganda. And so in this process, approximately 5 people died during this time, or 5 million, sorry, 5 people. 5 million people died during this point in time. So the UN Security Council kind of came in and put peacekeepers in around 2000. They put in about 5,500 troops, which didn't do that much. But in the process, they came up with another UN panel that spoke of the conflict minerals, which is the major focus of a lot of the conflicts that's happening right now. So these are most things that are included in your cell phones, computers, laptops, as well as gold, timber, and diamonds. So those kind of take focus in that. And then, so in 2001, he was actually murdered by his bodyguard and replaced with his son. So in 2002, a peace agreement was finally met after 7 years of continual peace talks failing. But there was an international rescue committee that came in and decided that 3 million Congolese themselves were murdered or died between 1998 and 2002. So the current conflict in the DRC has approximately 5 million deaths, which puts it the highest death count since World War II in a single country. So that is kind of the historical conflict. But what the church is doing is very revolutionary in itself. So in 1995, right as the conflict was beginning, Pope John Paul II came out with a document called Ecclesia in Africa. And what he said was his focus was kind of off of the synod, the first synod of bishops, which was kind of a synod of hope, looking forward, what can we do, that sort of thing, and reflecting upon that. 10 years later, there was a second special synod. That was a little more negative and focused on what needed to happen. They said that there was a widespread deterioration of the standards of living, insufficient means of educating the youth, a lack of elementary health and social services, with the resulting persistence of epidemic diseases, the spread of terrible AIDS, and a heavy and often unbearable burden on the international debt, and horrors that kind of resulted in arms trafficking and the refugee displacement. So the Vatican has kind of taken two different sides. From the papal view, it's more of a let's see what we can do. When the African bishops came, they were a little more critical of what was going on. And then you have the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. They actually have a committee on international justice and peace, which focused on advocacy and working with the U.S. government. They worked with Condoleezza Rice because she was the Secretary of State when they were trying to pass the Conflict Minerals Act. The Conflict Minerals Act makes it illegal for Congolese minerals to be sold in the United States. Granted, they still get in through different channels, but it makes it a lot harder. So that was a major stride in what the U.S. was able to do. not only are they doing that, they're working with the Congolese Bishops' Conference to kind of promote what's going on and bring awareness to the situation. But the people that have been most influential in what's going on are the Congolese bishops themselves. What they've done is, in this first document, the security and development in North and South Kivu, they really talked about what they're doing. The role of the church is primarily to protect and educate the population. And so in educating them, they're not talking about schooling and that sort of thing, but they're talking about civic education and trying to promote educated voters. All documents are in French, but most people in the outer villages they speak their tribal languages. So the church has been really an in-between in translating those documents from French into the language of the people, and trying to allow them to put into position the leaders that they need. They've also been working with the government to promote a military, which is kind of odd for a church to do, but the Congolese military really is insufficient right now and not doing its job in protecting the population, and so they are trying to up the standards and create a more protected population. And then you have these three documents down here, which are a little more strong in what they're doing. And they're a little more explicit about what is occurring. In one of them, they talk about a program that where the members of the church, not necessarily priests or bishops, but normally lay people will go into the jungle where the militias are located and pull members of the militia out and then provide them with education and kind of rehabilitation into a more productive society, which has been fairly effective. I know that they are really looking towards working on that, but in the process of doing this, they have put a target on their back. So among the millions of people that have died in the Congo, 3 bishops, including an archbishop of the major region, as well as countless priests and churchwomen have been murdered because of their actions in speaking out against the militias. They're trying to work with the government because this isn't a corrupt government. This is an insufficient government and a government that isn't fully working for the population. And so what they're doing is trying to have the population be protected by the government rather than the church, but the process is a little difficult. So that's kind of what the situation is right now. I know that the bishops are currently working on another document that will hopefully be the first translated into English, and that a lot more awareness will come because of that. It is a war that is lost a little bit, but at this time I can take any questions.